Hello, my name is Mariana Matus. I am CEO and co-founder of Biobot Analytics. I want to thank the organizers for having me present to you today. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit more about my personal journey from being a scientist to being an entrepreneur and co-founder at a company. So let's begin with my journey. I am Mexican. I am originally from Mexico City. Grew up there with my parents and my sister. We moved to San Luis Potosí when I was in high school. That's where I really learned about how diverse Mexico is, how different of an experience it can be if you live in the big city like Mexico City versus in other smaller communities around the country. It was a really great experience. Throughout my childhood, I always loved science. I loved math, biology, chemistry, and I was always dreaming about being able to really work on science and make something very cool, new, and impactful. In fact, it may sound a little silly, but growing up, I was very much inspired by the movie Jurassic Park and really the potential of science to change the world. I am actually the first member of my company to go into science as a career and to go to grad school. So after finishing high school, I moved to Mexico City and in particular to Cuernavaca to study my undergrad at UNAM, the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, where I specialized in the space of genomics, a very new degree that was offered at the time. I was part of the second ever generation or group of people that went through that undergrad. And the idea was to train scientists that knew about biology, but also about data science, statistics, physics, chemistry, to really create people who are very multidisciplinary and that thrive by bringing in tools from different fields to answer big questions about life, about people, about our health. It was during my undergrad that actually the first human genome was sequenced, and people were very excited about it, about all the potential that it could bring to medicine. And it was really amazing to again continue thinking about how can I use science, how can I use genomics and biology to solve some of the world's biggest problems. That motivation took me to do graduate school. And I was extremely fortunate that the Mexican government gave me a fellowship through CONACYT, the National Council of Science and Technology, to study abroad. That fellowship took me to the Netherlands, where I spent a couple of years living in between the Netherlands and the UK, and really specializing in the space of environmental biotechnology. That was amazing. Living and growing up in Mexico City, I was very much aware of all the challenges that we have to make our environment healthier and to decrease pollution and to decrease all of these really big problems that affect everyone, and really, the opportunity, for example, to bring better quality water to communities, all of these problems that affect society as a whole. Those are the ones that I've always been very naturally attracted to solving. So during that time, I really specialized in the space of environmental biotechnology. I learned about all of the really awesome research into improving water quality, into bioremediation, so using biology to get rid of pollution that already exists in air, soil, or water. Really learned about wastewater treatment. The Netherlands is actually one of the leaders in the world with regards to water innovation. So it was really cool to observe all of this stuff that is happening over there. However, as a biologist wanting to impact environmental health and public health, I still couldn't find really that one topic or problem that made me very passionate about and really wanting to spend more time on it. So I decided to continue through grad school. I applied for a PhD and I got accepted into MIT amongst other universities. Actually, MIT was the only university in the US that I applied to. Otherwise, all of my other options were in Europe. Since I had such a good time during my master's, that had been my natural inclination was to continue in Europe. But two very good things about choosing MIT, at least at that moment when I made the decision, where, number one, I would be closer to Mexico. I would be basically on the same time zone as my family, which still remains back in Mexico City and San Luis Potosí, and therefore, just easier to communicate with them than and to visit than if I had continued in Europe. And second is that MIT has really distinguished themselves from other academic institutions because they really want to expand the career options of scientists and engineers and really connect the dots to maybe career options that are not that traditional. I already knew from the very beginning that I love science, but I don't see myself building a career as a professor in academia. I always saw myself as somebody who would know science and then use that science to solve a big problem. I just didn't know exactly how. And I found the answer during my PhD. I found very important ingredients that made it possible for me to start a biotech company. The first one is I came across a very cool new technology and scientific field called wastewater epidemiology, which basically means that you analyze the wastewater from a community for biomarkers of health. And biomarkers that you would usually measure in urine and stool, you measure them in wastewater, and that gives you an average reading from that community. It's a way, if you will, as if we were a doctor studying the sample from a single person, but instead of looking at their urine and poop, we're looking at the sample from an entire community. And that community could be a city, a town, a neighborhood, could be a building, an office space, a university dorm, maybe one day even our homes. So I found that space, I found it fascinating. I found it to be really in its infancy. It's only been around for maybe the past 20 years or so. And I just saw all the potential to use the information in our wastewater as a new way to understand health and to be more preventative and to stop epidemics. Second ingredient that I found during my PhD was I came across the space of entrepreneurship and this idea that anybody can be a founder. It doesn't matter if you studied business or if you are a scientist or an engineer or just basically anybody. If you have a good idea, if you have the will to go and make it happen, you can go and do it. You don't need anybody's permission. And nowadays, especially universities are great nursing grounds for emerging entrepreneurs. They give you a lot of resources, they give you mentors, they give you money so that you can really get started. And I was very fortunate to be living through that transition where suddenly entrepreneurship was okay and was really encouraged in the student body. I remember when I had just started my PhD, still professors were very much skeptical about it and would have the attitude that, you know, students who come into MIT to do a PhD, they are coming here to do science, to publish papers, to contribute to grants. They are not coming here to start companies, and therefore students shouldn't be spending time on that. But through my PhD, that entire really attitude towards entrepreneurship shifted to the point where, you know, now professors and really the administration as a whole, starting with the president, are all very supportive of students who want to actually use their time, and, you know, where the outcome of their PhD is maybe not necessarily a lot of cool publications, but a company that they start out of their work. And the final ingredient that I found at MIT to really start Biobot was I met my co-founder, Nusha Gailey. She's an architect by training. She is Canadian. She moved to MIT to specialize in the space of smart cities and urban innovation. And together we had been research collaborators working on this wastewater epidemiology science before we both realized that we wanted to be entrepreneurs, and that we both believed that wastewater epidemiology could change the world, that it was a transformative technology and that it should exist in the world. And nobody was doing it commercially. It was a technology that had only existed in academia. And in fact, even today, we're still the only company in the world that has launched with the specialty of looking at wastewater as a public health information asset. So very important when you're starting a company is to have somebody that you trust and that you each other give energy and that you enjoy being with each other, because really your co-founder is going to become almost like another spouse in your life. It's almost like entering a marriage. You will be seeing this person every day for many years, hopefully. And you want to make sure that there's really a lot of respect and energy and trust, because that person is going to be next to you during the good ones and the bad ones. And I would credit a lot of, you know, I would say actually all of the success that Biobot has had to date and our growth is really all starting from that initial founding relationship. Basically, after we decided to create Biobot, we engaged in a lot of the entrepreneurship programs at MIT. We won, you know, pitch competitions, student awards, and then we got encouraged by some of our mentors to apply to Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator based in the Bay Area, and, you know, very competitive, difficult to get in. They actually claim it's harder to get into YC than to get into Harvard or MIT. I don't know about that, but we were very lucky to be selected in our first application. And just as we were spinning out of MIT, we moved for 3 months to San Francisco to be able to do YC. This was in early 2018. And really, I would say that's where our transformation started, to stop being, you know, really thinking about science and to really start thinking about business and entrepreneurship. It was a very good opportunity to develop our skills, to learn how to talk about our company, to learn how to talk to investors. And also through that program was that we fundraised our initial round of VC-backed money for Biobot in order to start the company. So it was a really amazing time in my life. Basically within the span of 6 months, I got married, because I also was very, very fortunate to to meet my now husband during grad school. He's also a scientist, and he's also Canadian. So we didn't, between like over a span of 6 months, I got married, we got into YC, we fundraised our first round of capital to really start the company, and I defended my PhD. It was a very intense early 2018. And then, you know, we had that moment, actually, we had the choice if we wanted to continue in the Bay Area, in San Francisco in particular, or go back to the East Coast. And for us, I would say it was mostly a choice of going back to the East Coast so that we could leverage our existing network for recruiting our initial team. So we came back to the Boston area where we had been living to be able to be at MIT. So we came back, and you know, that really is what started the company. That's when things got very real. Maybe, here I have a few photos from my PhD work, and it was, you know, just imagine like working with wastewater. Doesn't sound very glamorous, but actually I find it really cool. There's, you know, you get the opportunity to work in the lab, of course, but you also get to go out and spend time with, you know, just with the public works folks, driving around with their vans, opening manholes, getting the wastewater samples, visiting wastewater treatment plants, like you can see here in this photo. And we actually got to do this work not only in the Boston area, but we actually got to travel internationally to Kuwait, to South Korea, to also collect samples and do research. So it was all a very cool experience, and really the backbone, the scientific backbone for what we do at Biobot today. This is the founding team at Biobot. It's my co-founder, Nusha, and I, both women, both technical. She's an architect / engineer. I am a scientist, both immigrants. You can see here, we have surrounded ourselves with advisors who can really help not only with the science and engineering and medicine, and also with investors who believe in Biobot's vision. And by now, Biobot has raised successfully 2 rounds of funding, and that really has helped the company scale from this initial founding team to almost 20 employees today. And you know, what exactly can we do with wastewater analysis? Well, actually, many things. Wastewater really is a platform to do community health, but I would say right now, the COVID-19 pandemic has really opened a window of opportunity for us to massively educate the public health officials, government officials about the potential of wastewater epidemiology to be an epidemiology and a public health tool. As you can see here in this slide, we have actually had a lot of interest and coverage by the press. Really, this is a very special moment that has propelled the growth of the company. And even though, you know, it's been a very hard time for everyone personally and emotionally, it's also been for us, but at the same time, it also has been the moment where the company has been needed the most and where we have grown the most. And it's been really, really rewarding to know that our technology is contributing to our country getting out of COVID-19, but furthermore, our technology is going to help our country to stay ahead of the next epidemic. Because, you know, we believe that what we're living now with COVID-19 is absolutely preventable. There are the technologies to detect outbreaks infectious disease outbreaks, new viruses, bacteria, new antibiotic resistant bacteria, to detect new substances on the street, like new drugs or new contaminants in our food or in our water. It's possible to detect all of these health threats early. We have the technology for it. Wastewater is this footprint. It's a resource. It's full of those chemical and biological markers, and we just have to kind of go out there and get it and read it. And right now with COVID, we've gone through a massive growth as a company. We are working nationwide. We've had customers from across 42 states, and furthermore, interest also internationally. So we have a couple pilots with communities in Ecuador, Uruguay, Mexico, Canada. And it's really exciting to see that the potential that we've always believed for this technology is now being realized, and people kind of see that the value that it can bring to them. And maybe it's important for me to make a point as to, why does wastewater have all of this information? Well, that's because every time we're flushing the toilet, our poop and our urine contains that information. We may never be thinking about it, really, but this very natural activity that we all experience every day actually is creating probably like the most valuable data asset available out there, because it's data that is produced just like that, like organically, naturally, every day, and it's constantly changing and providing new ways to see what's happening. So it all starts at home when we're using the toilet. Then we just need to get some wastewater using samplers that are designed to go into manholes or other collection points. Those samples are analyzed in the lab with the same type of technologies that you would use for other types of medical samples. We do some data analysis, and then we share reports back with the community so that they can understand what's happening. When we started the company back in 2017, actually our first product was addressing the opioid crisis. COVID-19 really only started this year. And so before that, we were actually deployed across 8 municipalities, including both North Carolina and Massachusetts, where we were producing data on the opioid crisis. And I'm sure we've all read about it, but it's a huge problem that has been growing in the country over the past 2 decades. Despite billions of dollars of investments from the government, it continues to really get worse. And in fact, the opioid crisis has decreased the quality, the total life expectancy of the US, of people in the US, has become the leading cause of death for people under the age of 50. It's really a huge problem, and it really has evolved constantly with the introduction of new substances. So one of the key challenges in trying to curb the spread of the opioid crisis is to understand what type of substances or drugs are being used in a particular community, and then design the right intervention for them. It's similar to the concept that we hear in personalized medicine, where you don't want to think, for example, about cancer as this one disease that you can treat with just one type of treatment. No, the opioid crisis, there isn't a single opioid crisis, and it manifests itself in different ways, in different communities, with different types of people. So it's very important to customize how a community addresses their particular opioid crisis. And that's what our data was doing for our communities. We're basically be able to tell them, do you have more of a prescription or illicit opioid problem? Is your community using treatment medications like methadone? Is your community using overdose reversal drugs like naloxone? and and where and how is that happening over time. And we actually were very fortunate to show that in our first deployment with the town of Cary, North Carolina, that our data was efficacious. They decreased overdoses by 40% in the first 6 months of working together. And that was the first decrease ever they had seen in their town since recording, how many overdoses are happening, which over the past half a decade. So it was really, really amazing and very rewarding to see again how amazing it is to use science and your technology to be able to make a difference. And we were sort of like in the middle of that when COVID-19 hit. And that really, again, changed everything. We knew right away that our communities and really everybody, every public health person across the country and across the world will be busy responding to COVID-19. And we had to do something about it. I remember when COVID-19 started, still there were many people who maybe thought that it would go away within a couple of weeks or maybe a couple months. Being in the space of public health, we actually were very concerned from the beginning, and we thought, this is going to be around for a while. Like, we should be thinking how we can help and how wastewater epidemiology and our expertise and our technology can help with it. Why look for this virus in wastewater? Well, we saw evidence that the virus RNA, so its genetic material, can be detected in stool, so in the poop of infected individuals. This prompted us to test if we could detect the virus RNA in wastewater. And then finally, we believed that the data could be used to estimate the burden of COVID-19 in a community, alternatively to the data collected in hospitals, which, by the way, I'm just very, very passionate about this point, that people, today the data that feeds into public health is collected through the hospital system, through people going to the doctor, getting a test, and being counted. However, we know that not everybody is comfortable with really, going to the doctor. Maybe culturally, some people cannot even go to the doctor. Maybe they cannot take a day off from work to go to the doctor. Maybe they don't have insurance and they don't want to spend the money. There are many reasons why basing public health action out of hospital data is just not great. And it's really leaving people out and biasing our response to people who have more resources. In contrast to that, data that we collect in wastewater represents everyone. We all have a voice there. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter really almost where you poop. As long as you're using the bathroom, your information is gonna make it into wastewater treatment plants, which are these collection points where all of the wastewater from communities goes to get treated. And that's also where we are getting our wastewater samples and therefore data to understand COVID-19 spread. Very important, since we are a biotech company, is to publish our findings, to share our science with the world. We continue to have collaborators with institutions here in the Boston area, MIT, Harvard, Brigham and Women's Hospital. And since the outbreak, we have published now a couple of preprints, a couple of peer-reviewed publications as well, to share what we do, so that it can, further scientific activity, not only in the US, but across the world. Something that we did also to further this research was to encourage communities to send samples to Biobot and to, start producing data from across the country. And we saw a huge response. Basically, this really exemplifies the power of social media. We posted about this program where communities, basically wastewater treatment plants across the country, were encouraged to send wastewater samples to Biobot. We posted that in a blog post, in a Medium blog post, and then tweeted about it. And it got picked up by the media and went viral. And basically we ended up having hundreds upon hundreds of wastewater treatment plants wanting to be part of the program. We ended up having representation from 42 states, producing data on about 10% of the US population, which really speaks about the scalability of the approach. With only a few hundred samples, you can be testing tens of millions of people. And we learned a lot. With this data set, we produced the largest data sets in the world. We've continued to mine to create predictive analytics out of it. And we continue now working with many of these communities on an ongoing basis because they found it so interesting that they wanted to continue creating the data to inform their public health decision making. And, just things that we can do with the wastewater. I've already touched on all of these, but trend analysis give us an early warning if there's going to be new cases happening in a community, and then the scalability of the technology. And just to, kind of elaborate a little bit more on the science, we have now shown that wastewater data is a leading indicator for COVID-19 cases. And it gives you a predictive window of about 7 days in advance. That is really amazing because it's really giving communities the opportunity to understand that there may be a surge of cases coming to them over the next week or so. And this is possible just purely out of biology, because based on all of our modeling and learnings, our best hypothesis of why this happens, this predictive nature of the data, is because people who get infected with COVID will start shedding this virus in poop very early on after they are infected. Basically in the first 2 to 3 days, they are shedding a lot of virus in waste. And therefore, they contribute to the wastewater data even before they develop symptoms. Then they will go on, maybe develop symptoms, go get a test, getting counted. And that's what gives you that window of opportunity, that leading indicator, that early warning from the wastewater. Because the people who get infected will still have to go on to develop symptoms, go to the doctor before they get officially counted. And the impact, I think, is there, which is the most important thing, is, our customers saying, this is so useful because they are using this information to try to understand how to safely reopen and how to contrast our data with what they already know. Just to close, I want to just elaborate that, it's not just about COVID-19. Our goal, our vision, our dream is to build an early warning public health analytics system for any type of public health concern from our data available in our city sewers, is to make public health more preventative, more proactive, more data-driven, and more equitable. It's a way where it's a type of data set where we're all contributing, and that has the potential to make public health truly accomplish its mission of keeping us healthy, safe, and stopping outbreaks before they become epidemics. My dream is that one day this type of data collection will happen everywhere, in every city and town, not only in the US, but across the world. My dream is that one day, people will value wastewater infrastructure not only for its role to keep waste separate from us to enable urban centers, but also because it's a way for us to understand what's happening in that community and to keep that community safe. And I think really, all of this comes from all of these dreams and visions, and what the company is doing and what the company wants to do is really coming from my unique journey, growing up, in one of the most populated cities around the world, that has a lot of challenges with water and pollution and in general health, to connecting the dots to all of the amazing scientific education that I've been fortunate to have. And I think, to me, that's the most important reason why maybe non-traditional founders should go out to create companies, is because our unique experiences give us a new lens to solve problems in the world. And that's really our power that we have. And therefore, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't go by the stereotype of, I cannot be a founder because I don't look like this guy who created, this social media platform. There are so many problems open in the world, so many big problems to tackle. And our unique experiences, our unique perspective about life, our unique interests is what helps us create new businesses that are transformative. And I think, to me, Biobot is really an example of that, where we are trying to disrupt this public health data industry, data science industry, with a very novel approach. And I think that's what makes me so proud about the progress we've done, is because it truly captures and reflects my own, personal perspective and journey. And I would like to encourage particularly, any women, men, Latin or not, that are listening to this talk, to just go for it. At the end of the day, we'll always have the opportunity to go back to maybe safer career options, if you will. So, applying for a job. But if you have that like desire, that interest to go on start a company, like, you should just go for it. You will never be ready. So if you just feel the itch to do it, just go and do it, and you will learn on the job. Many times I'm approached by, just aspiring entrepreneurs, and they have all these plans about how they are getting ready for it. Like, they want to work maybe in a big company first, and then they want to work in a startup to learn more about startups, or so on and so forth. And the reality, and what I always say, is that there is no other job that is going to prepare you for this. It's going to have its unique challenges, its unique growth curve, and really, like, the best way to learn it is just to do it. So that would be my advice to any aspiring entrepreneurs out there, is just go for it, and and be just open to how things unfold. We never thought we would be in this position that we are right now. Nobody could have predicted COVID-19 was going to happen. So you just have to be very open and be ready to adapt. And that's what we've done. We adapted, put out a new product to look for COVID-19 in a couple weeks. It was definitely far from perfect, but it was something. And now it's grown and flourished, and now we're not only 2 people or 5 people, we are 20 people and still growing. So definitely just be open to that constant change, and adapt, and it will, it's a fun journey. I've enjoyed quite a lot. So With that, I want to thank you all for hearing my talk. Thanks the organizers for thinking about me. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to drop me an email. Thank you.